Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for tuning in. It's me, Scott Martin, as always from Bonsai Matsu. And this podcast is going to be an interesting one. I want to expand on the thought of, does it add to the design or does it distract from the design? That's something that we'll dig into a little bit. Also want to talk about learning from setbacks and that constant, perpetual forward motion that we need to have with our bonsai. A couple of things: change of season, August in Australia. We're just prior to spring settling in, and in the southern states, in Victoria where I am, the change of seasons always bring a few challenges with turbulent weather that we need to try and manage our trees through, to make sure that we come out the other end stronger than ever before. Also want to talk about, something which became very clear to me the other day, that you don't know what you're not shown, and it's so true with our bonsai learning for all of us. So I want to talk a bit about that too, and some interesting facts on one of our native species in Australia, the Eucalyptus, and there's a lot to cover. So let's get into it. Now, without trying to get too soppy, I just want you to know that I've recorded this podcast and all my podcasts for you, and just you that are listening, that are giving up your most valuable resource, your time, to listen to this podcast and hear what I've got to say about bonsai. And I truly am, hand on heart, very appreciative of the support and continual praise that comes through for the podcast, and I promise you that I'll give it my all in return to ensure that it always stays relevant and it stays something which you will continue to invest your time in. So thank you very, very much. All right, so change of season. Let's start with that one because it's big, affects people all around the world. I know, some regions, some tropical regions maybe only have a couple of seasons, the wet and the dry. We have very clear 4 seasons where I live, and we're just transitioning now from the winter season towards the spring season. So as I talked about last time, it's repotting time for a lot of species this month, more so for me with my pines and conifers, that sort of thing. But with the change of season comes a change in the ferocity of our weather patterns as well. I was just looking at the news this morning, and they're talking about severe rains and winds and that sort of thing. And it always seems to happen that around this time, I find myself battling the wind most of all, which is particularly challenging when it comes to trees that I've just recently repotted, because the delicate new roots that are growing need great stability. And they've been in the workshop long enough. I can't continue to protect them anymore. The buds are starting to swell, so they've moved back out to the benches, and then we get these howling winds coming through at about 100 k's an hour every now and then. At my house, where my bonsai are kept, I've got fairly large trees around the garden as well, and that's one of the upside is that they're beautiful. The downside is that few of the eucalypts tend to drop branches pretty easily, and collateral damage can often be a bonsai that's sitting underneath. So there's securing your trees to your benches or podiums or wherever you like to store them, but there's also the need to ensure that overhead damage is kept to a minimum, which can be challenging. I get that, but it's something that we need to do. Now with the strong winds, my advice is to protect the trees, but don't shelter them from it. I think my belief is that being exposed to those strong gusty winds and the environmental factors that come with this change of season, the torrential rains and winds and all that sort of thing, that's not bad. It certainly helps, I think, flush away maybe a few of the fungal issues that can occur later on that I see with trees that are kept in very sheltered spots that don't get exposure to those elements. So, another thing I find at the moment it's particularly difficult while trees are just starting to wake up is the moisture content of the pots and whether it's too dry or it's too wet. And it's so difficult at the moment trying to work out, should I water, shouldn't I water? Is the tree taking up the moisture? Is it not taking up the moisture? Because either way is just as bad, During the growing season, when it starts to take off, overwatering really doesn't become a major issue because you'll find that the tree, a good, strong, healthy bonsai, will continually take up the water and move it through its system. So there's not really a problem there. But during these periods of partial, coming out of dormancy, and there's partial growth and there's partial dormancy, it's like, well, do they need it today or do they not need it today? And it's very, very hard to tell. And that applies to all of us. We all feel exactly the same way. So don't think that you're alone in that. And I'll get a lot of messages about people worried about, is it too dry? Is it too wet? What's the impact? What's it going to be like when spring gets here? And everyone has those same concerns. So it's really, really normal. My suggestion to everybody is get a moisture meter from your local hardware or gardening store and use that to dictate to you when you should be watering and when you shouldn't. Just a simple device, probe, stick into the soil, let you know whether it's wet or it's dry, deep into the root ball. Because often, touching the surface of the roots just isn't enough. And you can't tell whether there's a lot of water in there or, just the top crust dried out and the rest of it's sopping wet below. So one of these moisture meters, I reckon, is a godsend, especially when you're in doubt. When you're still learning your trees or when you're not certain after repotting, has it woken up, has it taken off, what's happening with the tree. A very small amount of money, $10, $20, whatever it is, can give you great peace of mind and reassurance that what you're doing with your trees is correct. So that's definitely something that needs to be focused on at this time of year, is that change of season. It's tough every year. It's always the same. And another thing with these fallen branches, I had a couple come down in the yard the other day, maybe 2 or 3 metres long, so quite big. Hit the side of a bench, knocked a tree. Not much serious damage anyway. A few branches bent out of shape, a few things broken off, but it got me thinking about those setbacks. And I've talked about the need for redesigning when you're forced into a corner to do things, and it got me thinking with my bonsai. One thing that I'm very acutely aware of is that I want a constant forward motion with my trees. So everything I do with them has to be a forward step. Now that forward step can be a step backwards, a redesign, a removal of branch or something like that. And as I said, we'll talk. I'm going to talk a little bit more shortly about whether something adds to a design or just distracts from it. And when these branches come down, it's like always the same thought in my head. Oh no, it's the end of the world. But then you look at it and you think, what's done is done. You can't stick something back on. It has to be, a change of design or a change of angle or whatever the process is going to be. But it has to be that constant forward motion. Like anything in life, if you let the setback rule you and determine how you react, then it'll be negative. It'll always be negative. You look at it with that, that's it. It's over. The tree's never going to be as good as what it was. Whereas I think that you have to turn it upside down and change the approach to it, being that, if you have constant forward motion with anything that happens with your trees, improving the soil, changing your feeding regime, your wiring process, whatever it is, removing a branch that's been partially broken because a tree's fallen on it. Well, it's just got to be with a positive viewpoint to take that tree and your bonsai to the next level. If you don't, forget about it. It's a wrong hobby or wrong lifestyle for you. If you're constantly going forward with it, then there'll always be that shining light at the end of the tunnel, always something to strive for and achieve. Never, it was better 2 years ago. I go surfing, and the most common thing that I hear with surfing was it was great yesterday. That's so true, but there'll always be better days in the future. There'll always be a better day to look back on and say, well, that was great. Having a surf was awesome because I was there at that time and that happened. And I think it's the same with your bonsai that, sure, it might have looked better previously, but it's going to look even better and greater in the future with that positive forward perpetual motion that we have to have with our trees. Simple philosophy I want you to use with your trees when you look at them from now on. It's really, really easy, really, really simple. Does it add to the design or does it distract from it? Say it one more time. Does it add to the design or does it distract from it? Really, really simple approach to looking at your trees and planning for the future and trying to achieve perfection. So when we expand on that, it applies to every single component of the design of your bonsai. The pot, does it add to it or does it distract from it? And that's really, that complementary nature of a pot, I love it because there are so many different pots out there, so many different colours, so many different textures, so many different shapes and styles, or whether it's not a pot, what you call a classic pot anyway, whether it's a slab or it's a piece of clay that's been moulded to look like, a crescent, whatever it is. It's something which has got to either add or distract from the design of the tree. And here's an inside word that I've learnt the hard way. Just because you like it doesn't make it appropriate for that bonsai. You see a pot online, you look at it, you love it, you buy it and think, yep, I'm going to use that pot because I love it and I've paid good money for it. And I'm going to use that pot on that tree because that's a good tree and that's a great pot. So those two go together, they have to, because individually they're perfect. You put them together and it might not be the case, but I know I've personally stuck with things and gone, well, it's a really good pot, it's from a great maker, it's a really good tree, it looks awesome, I'm going to keep them together. But then when you break it down, does it add to the design or does it distract from it? And more often than not, for me, I found that it distracts from it. So by taking away my stubborn nature of just because and changing my approach to, well, it's got to add to the design. The tree, the overall design of the bonsai, which includes the pot, has to get better based on the container. It has to. It can't get worse, or it can't be distracting. So when you change these things, and I find that I do buy a lot of pots and I do tend to keep them all on the shelf, and my approach is when it does get to repotting time is to have a range of pots there and think, it could go in that pot, that pot, that pot, or that pot, whatever it is. Then when I start looking at the tree, start getting ready to do the repotting, have them all out and go, does it add to it? Does it distract from it? And when you suddenly get the one where the two pieces of the puzzle come together and match up and you go, that's perfect. It might not be the pot that I thought was going to go into, but it's definitely the one that suits it best. And here's another bit of advice for you as well. The combo, the pot tree combo, is entirely up to you, not up to anyone else. I look at things all the time and think, I would do this. I would use this pot. Cool, great, that's me. If it's my tree, then I can do it. But I never, ever inflict that sort of pain and suffering on someone else, because I know from experience that you do things because someone that you take notice of tells you something, and you might look at the tree and go, it's just not right, whatever it is. Put that branch over there. Yeah, okay, I'll do it because you're senior and you tell me to do this and I trust you. But you look at it and go, it's just not right. I just don't like it. I don't enjoy it. And same with the pot combo, put in a round pot. It'll look great in a round pot. I don't think so. I'd prefer a rectangle. No. Circle pot, that's the way to go. Put in a circle pot, look at it. Okay, now I don't enjoy the tree as much. So there's 3 years I've got to look at this tree in a round pot that I don't enjoy because I follow the advice of someone else rather than doing what I enjoy. And it ultimately comes down to, if you are enjoying your bonsai and you're enjoying looking at them, nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing else. Because if you put the time and effort in because you love the way it looks, the way it appears, then you'll keep coming back to it. You'll fertilise it. You'll spray it. You'll water it. You'll spend time with it. It'll put a smile on your face. It'll make you happy. It's exactly what it should be doing. So I just think that if you, in your own mind, think add to, distract from, every time you do something, then you'll end up with a far better tree. And it's about the long term, some of this stuff. If you've got a plan on improving your tree via the structure, via the shaping, via the angle, via whatever it is, and you think that, okay, if I do this now and then this grows over here, then that will add to the design of the tree. Positive, tick, great. Don't do something which is going to distract from it because you think it's going to look nicer, but it's not going to add to the overall concept or design of the tree. I think that long-term planning with a bonsai, and I've been repetitive about this, I know, but the long-term view for your trees is far better than a short-term view, and that adding to the overall design by having a tiny little bud on a trunk somewhere that one day will be a magnificent branch with all this substructure and will really add to the tree and make it look just perfect. When you look at it like a little bud, that's when you say, will it add to the design or will it distract from it? Will I rub that bud off the trunk, or can somewhere in my head see 5-10 years down the track that being the most magnificent little branch that will just finish the tree off? That's the long-term approach with it, and that's what you need to be steady. You need to steady the ship when you're looking at this stuff and the design of your tree, to make sure that you get past the now and start looking at the future design of the tree. Most common I see this distracting from the design is those silhouette branches, that originate from a very poor spot on the trunk that have been allowed to grow and wrap around and fill a void. The wrapping branches that maybe come from the back of the tree and wrap around end up becoming a side branch, and when the foliage masses on, no problems, looks good, looks nice and full. Yep, really good. As soon as that foliage goes, looks wrong, design structure looks poor, distracts from the design because you've got all these other really nice branches all around the tree, and then you've got this elbow bend on a branch which tucks around and really distracts from the design and makes you not happy. But then spring comes around, leaves come out again, bang, it's off, you forget about it, and another year passes and nothing further improves on that tree. I find that's really disappointing for everyone that looks at the tree. And I know I look at it and think, yeah, okay, it's very short term, and I wish I had the courage to remove or improve those things years ago, because years down the track, look, my older self wishing to talk to my younger self would be, you'll get there. It'll be okay. It might take a couple of years. It might seem like such a long time, a couple of years in bonsai, but it's a blink of an eye. It's 8 seasons for us. A couple of years is 8 seasons, and that's only 2 possible repotting cycles, 2 summers you've got to get through, and then you'd be a far better tree than what you have before it all started. And that's the hard thing to get through to anybody at any stage of bonsai, is that time is irrelevant with your stuff. Another one that I find that this add or distract is really common for is gins. My simple approach with a gin is, if it's appropriate, say it's on a juniper or something like that, then I will always look to provide a gin, always. And I'll always make that gin as long as I possibly can at the start. Really simple philosophy. You can always reduce something, you can't put it back on. So I always start with a really long gin that sometimes, the initial concept design looks really awkward, but then over time, once I let things settle and things start to develop, you start to then look and go, okay, if that gin was, 20% shorter, it would look better. So then I reduce it by 20%. And then next time I get to work on the tree a year later, look at it, start reshuffling branches, pruning, start improving structure, look at the gin and go, if it was 20% shorter. And so the gin then starts fitting the design of the tree. It's very hard with the whether the gin, when you first make it, is going to be 100% correct when you get it to its size that you want. So you need to make sure that you've got it to a point where it can be manipulated and adjusted, and if necessary, removed. If it doesn't add to the design, if it distracts from the design, remove it. It's really, really simple. But just don't rush the decision with it. Make sure that it's a well-thought process and you can see the future somewhere down the track where this tree is going to develop. Then you adjust it, because if you jump in and say, no, I'll never need that, get rid of it, cut it off, you don't have the option to say, does it add to it or does it distract from it? Because simply it doesn't have a choice. It's not there anymore. So gins, I think while we're talking about design too, one other area that is super crucial is that negative space. So that's the area where there's nothing. You have branches or pads sitting around, and then you have the negative space in between the two areas. It's really common to try and want to fill spaces with branches and foliage and have very full silhouette on the tree. But I find with my design, I love that negative space, and I try and incorporate it wherever I can, where the viewer is drawn into the branch or into the structure or into the trunk of the tree or whatever it is. And by having that negative space there, I find that I can use it in such a way that it adds to the design of a tree. So by not having a branch somewhere is a positive for me, as opposed to saying, oh, geez, I wish I had a branch there because there's a space. I need to have a branch in that area. Well, if that, on an old tree, the chance of getting a bud to grow is very rare. The possibility of grafting is there, but sometimes one of the options you've got is to use the negative space to your advantage, where you can say, I don't have a branch there, but if this branch was here and that branch was there, then from a distance you would look at it and you would see this beautiful part of the trunk, and you're drawn into that area. It becomes a key focal area for the tree, because you're on, let's say, the left side full of foliage, on the right hand side foliage at the apex coming down to that lower branch, and then there's a space with nothing. There's a void. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Stop, you look, you get drawn in, it becomes part of the story of that bonsai for the viewers, and in that case, it adds to the design.
I spend my youth dropping coins in a wishing well.
So another little concept, I love education. I love education in any form. I love the ability of people to learn things at any point in their life. And I consider that bonsai is definitely one of those things that has a learning point in it, from the skill set to the horticultural to all the good stuff that we love with our bonsai. And I've got a little story to tell, and I'll get back to how it relates to bonsai. So I've recently started taking up running, and I enjoy it. And I did a marathon, as I've talked about before, back in April. And since April, so it's 4 months, something like that, I've had a sore foot, one of my feet. And I think, I kept saying to myself, oh, it's, stress fracture. I self-diagnosed. Oh, it's because of the training I did for the marathon. It's because of this. It's because of that. Anyway, so then I did my own research. Found, thanks to the online nature of the world, found what the problem was, and found that I was wearing the wrong shoes, and got these right shoes that would land flatter. So I purchased them online, ran with them, and things just didn't get better. So anyway, what I was really enjoying and loving, running, I stopped doing it as much. COVID tended to help with that as well, but it was to the point where things were not right, and the joy that I was getting at one point was suddenly disappearing. So I caught up very recently with some relatives and was having a chat, and they're quite sporty, and we were talking, and one of them said to me, why don't you go and get a fitting? Why don't you go and get someone professional to actually talk to and look at it? And it's like, no, I've done all this myself. I know everything. I'm okay. And this was only a week ago, maybe a bit more, week and a half. Anyway, I thought I knew better and I was stubborn. I happened to walk past a shop, and a running shop, and walked in there and said, now listen, I know this sounds stupid, but you guys do these tests. And they went, of course we do. We do them. And I kid you not, within about 3 minutes, they used a treadmill, got me on there, ran, said, okay, we can see exactly what the problem is. Look at this slowed down video of your right foot as you land, your ankle rolls. So that causes problems here, here, and here. And I went, that's exactly what I've got. And they said, okay, so it's linked to the shoes that you've bought. And I said, no. I did my research. I know these ones land like this. And they said, well, no, they don't. And here's the evidence. Here's our experience. Let us teach you and let us show you. And I went, wow, okay. So then they showed me different things. The lady went straight away, grabbed a pair of shoes and said, here, put these on. Bang. Straight away. They filmed it and said, there you go, now you're landing flat on your ankle. There's no roll. You've got extra support in this area of the shoe. Therefore, it does this. And I kid you not, this pain that I was having, which has been sticking around for quite a long time, has almost disappeared now overnight because I actually became educated on something and went to a professional who knows what they're talking about and didn't just listen to the online world of experts behind their computer screens. And it got me thinking about that as I was sitting around having a beer later that day, and I thought, well, you just don't know what you're not shown. And I thought, a light bulb went off in my head, and I went, that's exactly what happens to people that come into the workshop or, that you work with or you do education with, because they may have, you guys that are listening, this may ring true, because I know it did for me when I consider my early days in the bonsai world, that you struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle, and then you get shown something and you go, that's it. Whether it's how to put a guy wire on your tree, whether it's how to apply wire to a branch, whether it's how to secure a tree in the pot, whether it's how to prune or how to default, whatever it is, you don't know until you're shown that visual medium, and having someone there with you side by side makes such a big difference. So I strongly encourage everybody that listens, that wants to take their trees to the next level, or you look at them and there's that frustration point of no evolution or no future plan. Talk to a professional, talk to someone that you trust, and spend time with them and get shown things, because that physical application of a technique is so much better than an online hunt around or thinking that, okay, this is how they do it and I'll do it like that. And I think that getting up close and personal to someone when they're doing these things, when of any type of skill, being shown something. I know I'm very much a visual learner, so when I see it, when I get up close and personal to it, it's like, I can now replicate that technique and apply it to what I do. And then there's the greater evolution of those techniques and blah, 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 blah. There's so much to it, but it was just really, really important for me. Even, I'm relatively new to running, as maybe some people listening to this are relatively new to bonsai, and you just don't know what you're not shown. So always keep an open mind. Always strive to learn more. Always strive to be better. Always strive to make things more perfect than what they are right now. No matter what they are now, it can always get better. Now, I was freed up the other day reading a magazine that came out of a local newspaper, and there was an article on it that really struck a chord with me. Now, due respect, I'll let you know who wrote the article. It was Nikki Gemmell, and the article was in praise of trees. And it was from the West Australian magazine, the Weekend Australian magazine, from the 31st of July 2022. And it was some interesting facts, which from a non-bonsai perspective, it's just facts about trees. And the trees were the eucalypt. Now, they're an Australian native, and they are magnificent trees, and they're very unique too. And I'll just got a few excerpts, not word for word, but I've got a few excerpts from this article that I thought it would be interesting to share on the podcast, because I know when I was reading them, my wife said to me, "What's making you smile?" And I said, "Well, it's just these beautiful facts on trees." And the eucalypt, to anyone in Australia, is a very personal tree. We all love them. You know, sometimes they get a bit close to the houses and they can cause some damage, and you maybe don't enjoy them, but they are very Australian, and I love the things. And it says, so part of the article was, imagine a world without trees. They're life-giving, shade-giving, de-stressing and reviving. And how lucky we're to live alongside their grace. These giants among us bring so much joy, and they do. I think that anybody, my thought is that, my belief that anyone that enjoys bonsai enjoys being around trees. Just because they're small and in little pots doesn't take away the joy that we have when you see a magnificent species in the wild and you walk past and go, whoa, look at that. If only we could have that as a bonsai. But, she also goes on to say, we see them, smell them, heal them, feel their magnitude. And that's true as well. I find that when I walk through parks or streets anywhere and you see a magnificent tree, it's always, oh, look at that. Look at the bark on that thing, or look at the twist, or look at those branches, or look at that structure, or whatever it is. There's always something about it, and they don't need to be a million years old, these things. They can be relatively young trees, but just have that grandeur about them, something which really draws you in and makes you stop and pause for a second. And the article goes on to talk about these eucalypts that we have in Australia. And it says that when and this is the part that I love, the smarts of a tree. When the leaves are young, they start horizontal to maximise the surface area and collect sunlight. On mature leaves, the stalks twist, making the leaf more vertical to minimise exposure. So what starts as a young solar panel, something which is highly effective for the tree, the position is maximised, so it can capture as much sun while it's as efficient as it possibly can. Then, as it starts to age, the leaf starts to turn on its side more, so it minimises its exposure to the sun, therefore creating longevity for that leaf. Still does its job, but it's not under as much stress as what the younger leaves are. And I thought, that is so cool. Just something little like that, that's one of these, evolutionary facts when it comes to these trees and why they live, they've survived for millennia. That they're amazing. And it also goes on to talk about as a moisture saving or water saving feature, these trees, when there's droughts, they will drop branches. So it's always for the greater good of the rest of the tree. And I know a lot of different species do that too, where they'll focus on the overall tree as opposed to one individual little branch, and that applies so much to what we do with bonsai. When we, you look at a tree and then go, I love that part of the tree, I love that branch. But if you don't look over the overall well-being of the bonsai via its roots, there's that drone again, back onto the roots of the bonsai. But if you don't look over the overall health of the bonsai, then the tree may turn around and go, well, you know what, that branch is ineffective, it's low down, it's not giving me the new leaves that I need to maximise the sun's energy, therefore I'm going to let that one die but put all my resources in this part of the tree. So, it all comes back together that the trees, when they're strong and they're healthy, we get a lot of options. When they're weaker, we've got far less options to work with.
I hoped one day that I would find a story to tell, how every regret so this empty life.
Well, that's it. that's another podcast wrapped up. Thanks for sticking around, and hope you enjoyed it. As I at the start, I really do appreciate you donating to me your time. It's the most valuable commodity each one of us have in any stage of whatever we do, and I hope that this podcast can provide something to you, some form of joy via your bonsai. And as always, please stay in touch via the socials or any which way you'd like to, because I do appreciate it. I'm more than happy to help wherever I can. So enjoy your trees, get that morning coffee out there, go and have a walk around, see what's happening, see if things have changed. Do that inspection, a daily inspection of your trees. Do they need water? Is there anything going wrong with them? What's happening that's going right? Make sure there's something positive out of your time with the trees, and enjoy yourself. It goes past too fast, so stop and smell the fertiliser bags every now and then. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time, happy bonsai.